A lady who's an absolute expert when it comes to hearing, Mona Sunde. Welcome to Bay FM, and I think we're going to learn a lot about Australians and their ability or lack of ability to maintain good hearing.
Well, thank you for having me.
So, the statistics aren't great in Australia in relation to hearing loss. This quite surprised me, how many people are affected.
Yes, it's about 1 in 7 have a hearing loss in Australia, and that is about 3.6 million people.
That's really quite phenomenal.
I reckon it's going to get worse. Now, look, we go back to our days and the discos and so forth, and that booming music in a confined area. Then it's digressed down to getting a very loud sound through a headphone into your ear canals. It's going to get worse, isn't it?
Yeah, I believe so. Years ago, the main thing was that people worked in places with excessive noise, and they got the noise-induced hearing losses from that. But then, of course, quite a few years ago now, there were new rules that would make people protect their hearing, and levels were restricted. But now, no restriction. When kids put these buds in their ears and just turn it up. And they say now, this is a report from Europe, that 4 million people suffer hearing problems because of wearing headphones.
Right, so I sort of assumed the 1 in 7 Australians. I must admit I was assuming it would be, as we get older, that normal progressive hearing loss for the elderly. But we're really talking about kids using their headphones excessively and loudly.
It really
as
annoys
well.
me when I see kids with the headphones in, school kids crossing roads, not looking. And if they do look, that's one thing, but when you cross a road, especially a busy road, you've got to be able to hear.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And you said with older people, yes. So over 70, when people get over 70, it's actually 3 in 4 people that has some kind of hearing loss.
And is there a stigma with a lot of issues, there can be a stigma. Is there a stigma associated with hearing loss, do you feel?
I do. I believe that any hidden handicap, people don't have the understanding.
Right.
If you're in a wheelchair, they're running and open the door for you. If you have a hearing loss, they go, "Oh, didn't you hear that?
Yes.
I told you that." And no recognition that it's actually not something people choose necessarily.
Yes.
Not to pick it up.
Because I imagine if your hearing isn't great, your comprehension isn't fabulous either, so therefore you might be repeating the same thing to someone over and over again, and you're just getting cranky because you're thinking, I've already told you this.
And that's another problem with people understanding a hearing loss. If you just keep saying the same thing over and over again, it might not actually even help them. And sometimes people scream in somebody's ears, and that's more detrimental than help. So little things like, instead of repeating something, to rephrase it is a very good help for somebody with a hearing loss. They might hear some sounds and not other sounds. So if you say, close the door, and you keep saying that, they may still have a blank look.
Right.
But if you say, don't leave the door open, they go, oh, she wants me to shut the door.
Because people can lose if they're losing their hearing, are they losing all of it, or are they losing certain sounds and levels for...
Yeah, so that's very individual, and that's why it's so important to have a hearing test to see which sounds have dropped more and less, and then with hearing aids, of course, we're trying to compensate for that. So we wouldn't amplify sounds that they can hear normal, but we want to bring up the sounds that's difficult.
Mona, do you think when it comes to hearing aids, like I know John Howard's got 2, and they're miniature, they're tiny, you can't see them, but I can remember my mum, who was in her early 90s, and her hearing was going. As everything does in your 90s. But she did not like the idea of wearing a hearing aid. Not at all.
No. And of course, there is the stigma, and there's also wearing something that you're not used to. So in the beginning, it's a bit of a discomfort maybe. Of course, if there's any kind of pain, you go back. But we advise people to start gradually. Normally, and actually for all the years I've done this, like 30 years ago, they said, oh, takes people an average of 7 years to admit they have a problem and do something
Wow.
about it.
That's quite amazing, isn't it?
I think it's vanity, really. It's a bit like reading glasses. You try and put them off as long as you can. That's you and I, Madonna.
I'm still in denial. I'm only using reading glasses at the
I have
moment,
to-
the old 20 bucks
I
ones.
have to feel my way to the car to find where it is.
But you know what the sad thing is? That with all the information all the professionals try to get out there, it's still the 7 years before people
Acknowledge.
acknowledge
That's
and
amazing.
do something about
So
it.
what sort of signs, because if someone's a little bit in denial but they sort of suspect something's going on, what could people be on the lookout for that's a sign that their hearing's going? Because obviously if I can't hear the TV, I turn it up. If I can't hear the music, I turn it up. So I suppose we've got ways of monitoring what's going on in our lives. Are there certain signs to keep an eye out for?
Well, other people will often monitor it for you, like, family or close friends. They go, but I told you that 3 times.
Yeah.
Or they come in and they go, oh, gee, your TV is loud. So that's alarm bells. Or if you are in a noisy situation, like in a pub club type situation, the cocktail party effect, like when you can't really have the conversation. And if that's getting worse, well, then it's probably time. But I feel that if people were smart, anyone over 40, have a hearing test. You have a reference for later.
Yes.
And if something's picked up then, you have a full assessment. Or you just, if somebody say, look, that's totally normal, wait another few years, check it again, so that you can monitor the progress of it. Because it's such a gradual change for most people that it's not like you wake up one day and go, oh, gee, I can't hear now.
Yeah.
That's very rare. Then it's a medical condition mostly.
And Roger, you've had a hearing test done.
I have indeed. Well, about 4 years ago, yes, and came up exceptionally well.
Yeah.
I'm told by the experts, but I worked in an industry where there was horrific noise. Initially, very little protection.
Yep.
It was never really strongly enforced. It is today as part of OH&S. Prior to that, many years in radio with headphones on, as I have now.
Yeah, right.
So I always believed when I walked out of that company that my hearing would have had to have suffered, but I got a big tick.
Yeah.
On your way.
Can I just ask one more question before we have a quick break? What's involved in a hearing test?
Well, depends on why you're coming for a hearing test. Like
Right.
most hearing centres would do like a free screen test, which is just giving us an idea. And then if we find that there is something there, we suggest to do a full test.
Right.
So what we do is we of course check every frequency to see whether that is within the desired level or not.
Right.
So
And once again, that's all quite individual. So when you're in there and you're doing it, you'll find out where the problems are. So that will lead you on to further investigation.
that's right. And if there is any sort of things there that indicate that there could be something medical, things like that, you would always want to refer to back to GP or to
A
an
professional.
ENT to investigate that. Yeah, like a doctor. And then, of course, if there is no contraindication for wearing hearing aids and you're at that level, that's what we would do next.
Yeah, because you showed us a media release that was put out on the 2nd of March, and one of the links is with dementia long term. So I've got to be honest, I've been doing...
We might have a look at that in a
Yeah.
moment. Mona, you did all your initial training and education in Oslo, Norway. Not only will we look at that media release, but I'd like to know those years in Norway when you initially were trained as an audiometrist, how it's changed from those days, how it's progressed to today. Right after this, and Mona, back in Oslo, I think this was a big hit. Back in 1960, you would have been a wee lass then, I tell you, but it would have been a big hit. A hit, well, it's a great sound right here at Bay FM.